Welcome to the ADHD Creative Club podcast, the place for neurodivergent creative entrepreneurs and freelancers to learn new ways of navigating the ever-turbulent world of life and business. Hello and welcome back to the podcast with me, Dave Neal. Today I've got a very special guest, and that is Ben Ogunbiyi, who is a filmmaker, fellow filmmaker like myself. Hi, Ben.
Hello.
So Ben is a writer, director, producer. He's made his name for himself with his socially relevant and high concept storytelling. He's got short films that he's made, which are really fantastic. Neon, Meat Free, and many others. And in 2022, Ben co-founded Ligatura Films, which is a production agency in London as well. And he's worked with loads of huge brands and lots of great people. So I'm really excited to get stuck into this chat. And of course, like everyone I'm speaking to, he also has ADHD. So Ben, thank you so much for being on the podcast. How are you?
Thanks very much for having me, Dave. Yeah, very well. Enjoying sunny Spain today. So, I'm feeling very lucky.
I'm so jealous. I just obviously caught up before we started recording, and you're out in Spain in the sunshine. How long have you been out there for?
Only a few days. Yeah, it's literally been the first week this year. I haven't had anything sort of lined up. So I was like, I'm going to use the opportunity to... just to refresh. I like to try every few months, just go for a week, little reset, change the area, really good for my mental health. And
I find with ADHD especially, sometimes you can get in a real funk with things, and actually just even changing your surroundings can make such a difference. And I think for us especially, it's pretty huge, I find.
Yeah, so I'll give you one example. I've been running now I've just completed my 90-day challenge. A good friend of mine, Terry, he's also a very good director. He's been kind of a motivator for most of our friendship over the last sort of 10 years. But he's really excelled in the last few years. You know, he's really sort of put a lot of time and effort into himself and his relationships. And so I would always be sending him little videos here and there, look at me, I went for a run. And he was basically listen, if you're not going to commit to a hard amount of time, then I'm not interested. I basically, I accepted the challenge, 90 days. And I tell you what, I noticed the shift in my focus after about a month, because it was something triggered in my brain where I was like, okay, no matter what I've got on for the day, there was that commitment that I had in the back of my head that was no matter, And sometimes I left it for 10 to midnight. Sometimes I'd get it done straight away. But the thing was always, you get it done. And I think that really helped with my sort of planning, because that's one of the things I really struggle with in my ADHD is focus and having a really good routine. So so something like running for me worked really well in this sense.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's great. So what's the 90-day challenge? So you've got to do it consistently for 90 days and then see what happens after that. Hopefully
literally exactly that there. Yeah. I mean, the idea is that you're basically creating new pathways in your brain. And for me, it was mainly about discipline, Again, something I think I've really struggled with since I was a kid was just having a good amount of discipline. And it wasn't, because my parents were bad or they let me get away with murder or anything like that. They gave me quite a lot of leeway actually. But I was I wasn't a rebel as a child, I wasn't sort of, don't let the hair fool you. I was actually quite well behaved. But for me, I just really struggled to build on those simple ideas of discipline and okay, this is the time that you need to set for, I don't know, homework, or this is the time that you need to read a book or whatever it is, I'd always be distracted by anything and everything that you can imagine, just constant things going on. So I think for me, being set a challenge like this has been so beneficial for me, and I've now seen how I'm starting to build really positive habits on top of this. Now,
yeah, that's really fantastic. That's so good. I had a similar thing in January. I did the classic thing that so many people do. I did dry January. Congrats. A lot of us, thanks. By the end of last year, I was kind of self-medicating with alcohol quite a lot. I wouldn't say that I had a super problem, but it was getting pretty serious. It was getting pretty regular. And so I was like, right, I'm going to do it. And I did it with a couple of mates. So I had a bit of accountability for that first month. And then I've kind of kept that going, and it's only been 2 months so far. But
Well done.
I just
Well
feel
done, Dave.
like, yeah, for me, like I started tracking my habits, and I had exactly the same as you. Like I could never keep anything going. I could never keep anything up. I had a gym membership once, and I went like solidly for a month, and then nothing. And like it's just a classic thing. I just
Yeah, it's
couldn't
classic.
start any routines. But tracking what I was doing, it has really helped me. And like seeing that I've got this streak going, and it's meant I've exercised more, and my brain is a lot clearer, got more energy, like mentally as well. And I think if you can find that thing that keeps you going back to it, even if it's variety that keeps you exercising for ADHDers, like I think it's huge. Actually, it's really changing my perspective. I was never like a fitness freak in that sense. But so coming back then to your kind of your filmmaking journey, all the listeners of this podcast, possibly some other ones as well, but mainly it's creatives, so people, you know, in the creative industry. So I'd be really interested to know like how you started on your filmmaking journey, and alongside that, kind of how your kind of neurodiversity has helped and potentially hindered that journey at times, but how they kind of work together. It's quite a big question, but go for it.
Yeah. I'll do my best to condense it so it's not like, going to take up 45 minutes of this podcast. But essentially, I was always intrigued in film, like from a kid, like most filmmakers, I guess. Like I remember mum telling me, like I used to put on the VHSs by myself, so I'd watch like RoboCop when I was 5 and stuff like that, and she was terrified because obviously there's a lot of violence and gore in that film, so probably not suitable for a 5-year-old, especially back then. But I never knew what the direct path was into that type of career. And back when I was at school, so I'm 37 now, so this would have been like about at least 20 years ago, maybe longer. I don't think there was as much opportunity, or at least exploration of the creative arts as a long form career. You know, it was still relatively niche, I think, before YouTube and things like that. And I remember I was 15, 16 at school, and they just introduced media studies, and it was like, wow, camcorders, and they had they're really showing our age, the Mac, the Bubble Macs, you know, like the big old
Yeah.
one, yeah. And they were like, you can learn how to edit on them. I was like, this is amazing. Like, oh my God, like. And I've always been really invested in technology. Like I love tech, how it evolves, how it like, enhances our ability to do things quicker, more efficiently. And for me, yeah, the camera, I think, was just something I was so invested in. My mum's a photographer as well, so I was always interested in like visual mediums. And yeah, I just love the idea of like what the camera does, how it captures things, people's faces, emotions, all that. So anyway, did media studies alongside drama. I originally wanted to be an actor, and I love that process of acting and working with others. And I think after sort of doing both of those, I was like, okay, maybe behind the camera is more for me.
How did you find like learning lines as an actor when you did the acting? Because that's something that I always struggle to kind of retain information.
My mum actually was talking to me about this the other day, because I've also got I'm also diagnosed with Asperger's, or Asperger's if you're American, and so for me, like remembering large portions of information is actually quite easy, because I've got a bit of a photographic memory, so I kind of just like analyze and then it sort of stays. But my mum said this to me. She said, "Oh, you were telling me like she asked me, how on earth did you remember all these lines?" And apparently I said to her, "Oh, that's easy. I just learned everyone else's too." So basically just learned the whole script. And that enabled me to know when my lines were, how to prepare, how to set up, all that kind of thing. But yeah, jumping from school to this as more of a career was quite a long process. I didn't really have or know anyone in the industry. So I spent a few years waitering, working in pubs, things like that. I'm a very stubborn man, so I didn't tend to last too long in those environments. I love the front-facing element. I love talking to people, learn so much about human beings, but I don't really being like told what to do. I question everything. I think that's my Asperger's as well. Like, I need like a practical reason for things. So they'd be like, "Oh, I need you to do this." And my first, instead of being like, "Yes, sir, you're the boss," I'd always be like, "Yeah, but why? That was done 10 minutes ago. It doesn't." Yeah, I'd always be questioning. And I don't think employers like that very much.
Yeah.
So I always knew, I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to get into film in some way. And my break came because my godfather, or my uncle, really, he's been working in music for a long time, like 20, 30 years. And I was talking to him about it, and he said, "Oh, I'm working with this Russian artist. We need some behind the scenes stuff captured. Would you like to come and just have a go?" I was like, "Yeah, great." So gave me like a Sony cam, HD cam. And then, yeah, it was my first experience on like a music video. It was shot in Malcolm Ryan Studios, which is in Wimbledon. So it was on location, 2 days working with this director, and first time like being on set, seeing the camera and the crane and like how the DPs would light and set all these things up. So I was like, like a kid in a candy store. Wow, look at all this. From that process, essentially, yeah, I was told afterwards, like, this is great. Here you go. Like, go and buy a camera and discover, learn more. And so that's what I did. I bought a DSLR.
So
it was DSLR revolution at that point. So digital cameras had just become like available for, prosumers. And like many kids, I was like filming skateboarding with my friends, going and filming gigs, things like that. And then my elevation into film would have been when I met Terry, my director friend I mentioned earlier. We did a music video for my brother's band, maybe like 2015, something like that. Yeah, we just got on like a house on fire, and he told me after the shoot, "Hey, look, I'm doing this film. Would you like to come and help?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." Again, I was so invested in, I just want to be on a set and learn and, work with people.
yeah.
And so, yeah, essentially I came on as a second AC, like camera assistant for Jack, who was the DOP on this first short film. And it was very low budget. We shot in the house and we shot in the forest. And it was all great. And I was like, okay, cool. This is amazing. And then about 6 months later, he rang me again and he said, "Look, I'm shooting a film in France. Do you want to be a part of it?" And without even asking the details, I was like, "Yeah, sign me up. Let's go." And what followed was a 12-day madness. Let's put it that way. So I was tasked with collecting all the van from London, first and foremost, with my friend Ryan, who's the gaffer, who's in charge of lighting. And then we drove across to Calais on a ferry at like early hours of the morning. I couldn't tell you, maybe 4 a.m. And then we had to drive from Calais, which is the north of France, all the way down to Soubez, which is near Montpellier, basically south of France, the coast. And that took about 14 hours. And that was just on the travel day. So already we'd done like almost 24 hours of like traveling and collecting gear and stuff. And then the next day it was like, okay, cool, now we're ready to go. But still to this day, Dave, it was my most beautiful experience I think I've had on a set because, no one was getting paid. We were staying in like family's house. The makeup artist, it was her hometown, Lou. So, she was born there. And so after the shoots, we'd go and have wine and she'd show us all like her area and like the beautiful, the environment surrounding. It was just magical. It was absolutely magical. And I think for me, that was when I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to work with beautiful people and tell really wonderful stories. And yeah, so I guess that was kind of the birth of that journey.
That's so cool. For those people who, I mean, obviously I'm in this industry, so I understand that those short films, the independent films, it's a very common story of like everybody mucking in, nobody getting any sleep, and just like going for it. And I think it's a path that a lot of filmmakers kind of go through to kind of cut their teeth at the beginning. But it's also like a story about kind of camaraderie and like just getting mucking in and everybody doing like helping each other out. And I think, those environments are just so good when you're starting out and when you're really passionate. And I imagine you were kind of hyper focusing and getting super obsessed with this new career, which affords you this amazing creative outlet. And it must have been absolutely exhausting. I imagine like coming off the back of that, you were just completely ruined, even though they had some great memories.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know how you feel, but like, especially with the way my ADHD affects me, I don't really feel it until a few days later. I think that adrenaline just stays with you, right? And so you're kind of coasting, you're like floating a little bit. And then like 2 days later, you'd be like, oh my God, I'm dead. Like, yeah, I'm absolutely ruined.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's one of the things that I've really learned to love about my ADHD is that it exacerbates my passion, I think. Like it makes all the things that I'm super passionate about and excited about, that just amplifies it. And then what that does is it just gives me so much more drive to then go and attack these challenges, these things that I want to do. And this is something that I didn't really accept when I was younger. I think like most people at that age, like I don't know when you were diagnosed. I was diagnosed when I was 11, which apparently is quite late. And so already I'd had to sort of go through primary school, and you it's already a difficult time navigating that. It's like self-discovery, your identity, your hormones, relationships, all these different things that you're learning about. I think for me, like most people, I felt a bit of an outsider, and like really, like most, we want to be a part of something, right? I think that's like most human beings, we are built to be a part of a community, and whatever that looks like to you, what that means to you. And so yeah, I used to, after school and after being with friends, making friends and things like that, I still wasn't very comfortable with like who I was. And so much like we were speaking about earlier, like I used to smoke a lot of marijuana, I used to drink a lot, because that was like trying to suppress that part of myself and try and be more normal, let's say, whatever that means.
Yeah.
So it's been really, really, those moments is like, remind me like, yeah, this is the reason why you are this way, because that part of you is like what drives you to action, to then, make these things happen. So actually, yeah, I was hindering myself rather than trying to solve a problem I thought I had.
Yeah. Well, I was very late. I'm very new to my diagnosis, and it's been a real journey of discovery. There's a lot of things that have been uncovered, and a lot of aha moments of like things that I just potentially thought I was just bad at, or I had bad experiences with, or whatever. And I can kind of now pinpoint these moments and these things. So like from your perspective, being diagnosed, I know you said quite late at 11, but to then the attitudes as well to mental health was slightly different. They're only kind of coming really round. It's still there. There's a lot of stigma around it, which is partly the reason I wanted to do this podcast, is to try and, bust some of that. But how have you found that others have kind of reacted to you? And you were saying you were still kind of doing a lot of masking, but like, or kind of self-medicating. Was there anything that knowing you had it helped you through that period, do you think?
I think, yeah, but it's a strange one as well. How human beings are so contradictory at times. So like, there's a part of me that was like, I love who I am. Cool. So part of me would be like, I love who I am. Fuck you if you don't, But then the other part of me was like, oh, I really want to be accepted by. So there was that kind of battle that I was going through. But I had some friends who were like, yeah, we love you because of who you are. This is the reason you're in my life. Because if these things that are suppressing those parts of your behavior, that to us is not who you are. You know what I mean? There would be times when I would go to social events, parties, down the pub, and if I was feeling particularly boisterous or very energetic, some people just weren't able to deal with that energy. And I used to take it quite personally when I was younger. I'd be like, because I wanted everybody to like me. If you went through that phase where it was just like, yeah, like what I had to say, why don't you like me? What have I done to you? And it was for no other reason than I was just giving off so much, and some people just can't handle that, and they don't want to, which is absolutely fine. It's their right. And so that was part of the learning curve, was like you to be who you are, but then in certain situations you can just they're out of the respect of other people, you can learn to tone it down a little bit, So instead of needing, so again, it was that great alternative to like having to self-medicate. So instead of needing something to suppress, I had to learn how to learn to have better social skills, let's say. That would enable me to have like greater success, I guess, in social situations, And now I think I'm at an age where I'm really lucky that I've had that time to learn, reflect, practice, and like, yeah, now I can read the room better, Whereas maybe when I was younger, I'd just be like coming like a bull in a china shop, man. Let's go. And now I'm like, okay, it's not that vibe. It's everyone's a bit more chilled down. Okay, I'll be like this for half an hour. But the one thing that I do still notice is that my focus still can shift. For example, you could be listening to somebody talk or watching something, and about 45-minute mark goes, and my brain sometimes will start to be like, oh, I wonder what's for dinner. And then that will go down a rabbit hole of like, well, I wonder what that tastes like. So that's the one thing I'm still learning to do with my ADHD. Yeah, I haven't quite got there yet.
It's really interesting. I think as well, I feel like part of this conversation and the fact that people are becoming more aware of these conditions as well, who are kind of neurotypical, I think that means that people can also be more understanding of these situations. If you're vibing with this conversation, imagine having a whole community of creatives who also actually get it. That's exactly what I'm trying to build at the ADHD Creative Club. Head to the ADHDcreative.club right now. Yes, right now, before you forget, and sign up for tips, tricks, and real talk on surviving as a neurodivergent creative entrepreneur. The ADHDcreative.club. I'll put the link in the show notes because, let's be honest, you're not writing that down. So, all right, back to the conversation. I guess it's always who you know. So did you just kind of carry on meeting people and then that just kind of grew and grew and then you started making your own films? Like, how did that journey happen?
If I would give advice to my younger self now, it would have been like, go and seek people that are doing what you want to do and can give you like a really good blueprint to follow. Because I didn't really, again, I think I was so excitable. Like, I'm somebody that always tries to run before I can walk. And I think that's been great in terms of like pushing myself and like just like not wanting to wait and like be wait for permission. I'm always somebody that's like, I'd rather just do it and then beg for forgiveness. But definitely financially through the years, I struggled more because I didn't have a sense of structure for my business. I didn't understand like how as a service provider what that looks like, you know, how to structure your finances, all these different things. So it was tough for a long time, you know. It took me a long time to figure that out. I basically worked as like a videographer and an editor for years and years, working for several brands, and yeah, luckily for me it worked out because I think, again, because I'm so sociable, I just approach anybody. I don't really care. I'll just go and speak to some random stranger and see what happens, you know. And it's all, yeah, so for each job or situation, something would just lead to another opportunity down the road.
Yeah.
I almost climbed the ladder without even really realizing I was doing that. And I would say it's only really been since I met my business partner George and the last sort of 3-4 years where I've really like, again, had that clarity to be like, okay, cool, this is what we do, this is how we do it, this is how we structure our business, this is how we build relationships. But I think, yeah, for me it's always been that. I was taught, like most when we were starting out, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I think you also have to be good at what you do, and I also think you have to be nice. I think that's really the key, because if you're an a-hole, nobody, you know, they might work with you because they get something out of it, but they won't enjoy it. And for me, the experience is the most important thing, right? You know, it's not the end product, it's the experience of who you work with and the things you learn and the things you take away. You know, I want to always build really positive spaces for my collaborators, because that's the most important thing for me, is that they walk away with really, you know, inspiring experience. Sometimes the product isn't, in fact, most of the time, the product isn't what you want it to be. I think that's inherent of being a creative, right? You're never going to be fully satisfied with what you're doing.
Yeah.
So the next best thing really is to know that, like, I did as best as I could to create a space that everybody can feel warm and welcomed and encouraged to be involved in the process, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. On the back of that, what do you feel the attitude in the film industry is to neurodiversity? You know, do you feel like there has been a problem with people accepting that, or whether it's accepting, or maybe there's work to be done?
Okay, so I would say I'm not fully qualified to answer this question. And the reason for that is that there's two. So for people who don't really understand how our industry works, there's roughly two routes you can go. You can either go the industry route, which is you start as a runner and you work in a production company and you work your way up. Or you can kind of do it the freelance way, where you run your own projects and you meet producers and then they start believing in you and they start investing in you, and then, you know, you start making work and then you get to end up working for studios and execs and things like that. And I remember I started running, how many, 5-6 years ago, just before I started directing, actually, about 5-6 years ago, because I was like, again, I just want to learn about how a feature film runs, you know. I wanted to see all the moving parts, and I loved it, you know. Again, all that energy, running around, being useful. I'm a bit of a people pleaser as well, so that was always that element of that. I think it's great if you're a runner because you're always sort of giving, sometimes to my own detriment. afterwards I realized that, you know, maybe I wasn't being paid enough money, and like there were certain things that I think were overlooked. I was sent on really meaningless tasks that weren't actually useful for the production, but more like personal errands. And that was when I was like, "Do you know what? I'm not interested. Like, I'm not, you know, I'm not here to go and get, you know, Joe a cup of whatever because he's thirsty. If, you know, if it's not going to benefit the production." Again, I think that stubbornness in me was like, "Do you know what? That's fine, you guys. You do that thing." And when I found my own route, found my own people, and together we built something. And I think that's kind of like how we sort of come in. But back to your point, which is what you asked. I never really saw myself as, well, back then we say disabled, but I never needed to ask, you know, even when I signed things that say, "Do you have a disability?" I was, no, I don't, because I don't see myself that way. It wasn't because I was ashamed or anything. I just didn't think that it had such an effect on my work that I needed like special treatment. You know what I mean? Having said that, though, I think what has happened as we have been made more aware of people, of like needs, and we've tried to be more accessible and open up these doors. I do feel that we're going a bit extreme in the other way, that we're kind of, it's become a bit of a tick box exercise. So you know, you might go, well, I'm going to let this person in just because they happen to be of a certain race or a certain background or have a certain disability. And I don't think that's really right either. I think it should be across the board open opportunities for anyone who's good at what they do, right? Because, you know, a person is a person at the end of the day. We all have skills that can be utilized and evolved and learned. So I think it's about access for sure, but I don't think it should be just because it looks good for the company or just because, hey, look at us, like we employ neurodivergent people. It's like, yeah, you know, shouldn't you just employ and give opportunities for everybody anyway?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree.
That's my feeling on it. Yeah.
Why do you think it suits your brain being a filmmaker? Like, why has that kept you doing what you're doing and loving what you're doing for so long?
That's a great question, Dave. Yeah. I don't think anyone's asked me that in that way before. So I think being a filmmaker is like a chance to almost like hold a magnifying glass up against the world. And I think it's a chance to explore ideas that aren't necessarily like spoken about. Commercial level is not the correct term, but, you know, like you said, an open dialogue for something, things that are considered taboo. I like to be able to have another perspective on it. And I think it's also really important that when you talk about subjects that are taboo, try and come in with a very objective view on it rather than a subjective view, because obviously your own feelings about something might color the image, as it were. So I think it's important to kind of show things as they are, because we get enough of that with like TV and media, newspapers. You know, I don't watch the news personally because, yeah, for my own reasons. And I just think it's an opportunity to really show things from a place of truth. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to describe it. And I'm also a bit of a justice warrior, so, you know, I just hate. I think because I was bullied a lot when I was a kid, so I think, yeah, I've got a big problem with like bullies in general, or people that try and put other people down for any other reason than who they are. You know, all of that stuff. I won't stand for it. And so I think I try and find ways to bring that up in my work as a way of like communicating that to an audience, or to, you know, to people out there that, you know, these things have, all our actions and our words have consequences at the end of the day. And that's why we have to be very careful about the things we say and the things we do.
Yeah, absolutely. What's next for you then? So what does the future hold for you? Like, have you got projects in the pipeline? Yeah. Love to know.
So big one is we are in development of a TV series called Faults that mainly deals with classism and addiction, set in the UK. It feels quite fitting with the last decade England's had, I must say.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's been a lot of interesting developments in that country. So yeah, we wanted to tell this story that kind of highlights some of those challenges that people are facing. And then on top of that, I'm developing my first feature, which it's going to be a horror. Awesome. And it's still quite early days, but it's basically going to be about there's going to be some sort of cannibalism involved in it, because I don't know why I'm obsessed with cannibals at the moment. I have been for a few years. If you've seen Meat Free, you'll understand. And then also, yeah, I'm getting a lot more into producing these last couple of years. Again, I love filmmaking, I love stories, and so even if it's not my own story, to be able to empower other filmmakers to tell their story and to give them the best platform or opportunity to do that, that's like, that puts a massive smile on my face and makes me go to bed very happy.
So finally, I guess it sounds like you're pretty busy in the future, which is great. So I'll have a look out for all that stuff when it comes out. But like for anybody listening, what is like a piece of advice maybe you could leave people with, something that you found has helped you? We've talked about quite a lot of stuff throughout this chat, but if there's anything that you can leave people with that's like your little tidbit of advice.
Number one, period. Be kind. Yeah, you'd be so surprised just flashing a smile to a stranger, what that will do. The butterfly effect, right? Not only will that empower you and give you a great sense of happiness and joy, you might then turn their day into something that might have been a nightmare into, a dream. And I think the second thing I would say is learn to love yourself. Honestly, I couldn't tell you again, I'll have to reiterate. Once you start believing in yourself more, everything else starts to change. We always have these conversations. People ask, how do I be happy at my job? How do I get more money? How do I do this? How do I do that? And I think it literally all starts with you. It's like, if you're willing to invest that time and energy into yourself, whether that be, eating better, drinking less, exercising more, reading more, whatever it is that you choose and desire, it's your life. You get to decide that. But I truly believe you start investing more time and energy into yourself, everything else will start to get better as a byproduct of that.
Amazing.
That would be my main advice.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, thanks for today. Honestly, we've jumped about as I knew we would. We've covered so many amazing topics. Like, it's been so great to have you on. So thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Dave, I really, really appreciate it. You can find us. I'm on Instagram, Ben Has Gone Bananas, and also you can follow us at Ligatura Films. Yeah, those are the two main platforms. So yeah, if anybody wants to come say hello, just drop me a message and we do our best to reply to everybody when we can.
Awesome. I highly recommend Ben's films. They are absolutely incredible. So everyone, please head over there and, give him a follow and give him a shout and have a watch. So thanks for your time, Ben. Hopefully much. Good luck with all of the projects you've got coming up. I'm so excited to see how you get on. So appreciate it. Thank you.
You too, sir. Thank you so much.